Harry and Meghan's charity has been banned from raising or spending money after it was described as delinquents.
Well, I know for a fact this to be true. The Archwell Foundation, named after their son, Archie, has been kind of caught not filing its paperwork, which, surprise, surprise, surprised no one.
Whereas normally filing paperwork in court is what they're good at.
Well, you'd have thought so, wouldn't you, given all the practice that they've got? You know, the number of lawyers that they've hired, somebody would have thought to have done it.
Didn't they have NDAs at the school?
Well, yes, if I remember rightly, they did for a lot of the teachers and a lot of parents and everything. But what's interesting about this is it kind of feeds into the narrative that the Harry and Meghan are quite lazy people.
Yeah.
If you remember, the chief of Spotify said that they were absolutely useless and you know, milking everything that they could get, and this kind of bleeds into the fact that the foundation isn't really as serious as they want it to be. It suffered an $11 million drop in kind of funding and kind of money raised from year on year.
Is it like the Clinton Foundation, who managed to alleviate poverty by paying for Chelsea Clinton's private jets?
I don't want to get sued, so I'm not going to comment on that one. My legal bill is high enough as it is after doing this show for so long. But no, this seems to be a real problem and a kind of pattern of behaviour for the Sussexes now that, you know, they're not really serious people, which we've been arguing for quite some time.
Are you suggesting that Archwell is just a virtue signalling PR stunt?
Well, I couldn't possibly comment on that one.
I can't believe it. This is new news.
New news.
I have to say, I'm surprised the phone hasn't rung from the lawyer.
I know.
Going after...
There it is.
No. But Russell, I mean, these two, they were described by Spotify as grifters. The reality is that they are just really parasitic on every organisation they ever go to. What amazes me, and Dr. David Starkey said this, is that these people have managed to trouser tens and hundreds of millions from seemingly sensible organisations. Not even you've achieved that.
No, I know. No, we're not yet. I'm working on it. Hence, I'm on 2 shows tonight. Yeah, it's just window dressing, isn't it?
Yes.
We know that, right? So everything that they have done has been based on facade. It's been based on window dressing, and funnily enough, not based on talent, as I think is evident here. So not only do they not have any talent when it comes to Spotify, podcasts, and so on, but they can't even file their paperwork on time. And the irony of them going across, of course, to Nigeria over the last few days, this pandering, this virtue signalling, this look at us, aren't we wonderful, aren't we lovely and soft and fluffy, and we're at home with our heritage and our roots. On the plane home, they must have had the message saying, sorry, your charity's been shut down. So it rather exposes them for what I believe they are, right? Which is fake.
For what I understand, the whole point of going to Nigeria was something to do with the Archwell Foundation and kind of linking two charities.
What, to spend the money on the private jet?
Sam, I'm going to ask you this question. If you had £10 to donate to charity, which of the 3 charities would you go for? The Princess Diana Foundation, the Captain Sir Tom Moore Foundation, or the Archwell Foundation?
Well, look, this is the thing, right? Harry and Meghan have now been reduced to literal Nigerian princesses, calling you up, saying, I am the deposed heir to the throne of Great Britain, robbed out of everything, give me your money, please. And look, the excuse was the cheque has got lost in the post.
Funny.
I mean, that's worse than the dog ate it.
Do you think his phone might ring in a minute and it'll be them asking for Andre's PIN number?
There you go.
6285.
Remember that before we go to the pub after.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? This whole idea that they're going, oh, we lost the cheque in the post. I'll tell you why I don't believe they sent a cheque, because it's not 1995.
I know, yeah.
Who sends a cheque these days?
No, but I completely agree with Sam. It is such a kind of the dog ate my homework excuse. And I genuinely couldn't believe that somebody, given all the PR people that they've hired and fired and gone through, that's the best advice they could come up with. It just really shows you that, you know, these foundations can actually do a significant amount of good in the world. And I actually think that Harry and Meghan...
Just not theirs.
Just not theirs. But they could have actually done something with this. You know, this could have actually been their saving grace. And yet again, they've just used it as a grifting exercise.
And the bigger tragedy, of course, will be that even though it's their fault, right? So they're the trustees, they have to take responsibility. Yeah. They're the responsible people in terms of the front-facing element. Yeah. I bet they fire a few people.
Oh, yeah.
They'll pass blame, abdicate responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, they've got members of staff who've been there over 3 weeks.
I know.
I mean, that is a record for Harry and Meghan. It's absolutely phenomenal. Anyway, so have Harry and Meghan's charity been banned from raising or spending money? Is it true or is it false?
It's true.
It's absolutely true. The stalker, quote-unquote stalker, who inspired Netflix's worldwide hit, Baby Reindeer, says she's going to sue Netflix. Now, I've got to be honest with you, the allegations against her were quite serious, but what amazed me was, in most TV shows, they sort of say, this is based on a true story. Netflix said this is a true story.
I think she's more miffed about her fee. it seems. I don't know if you've read about this, but
Yeah.
when she realised, obviously, the power of the whole Piers Morgan thing in terms of this is now going to go global, it's going to be a viral video, understandably, she's now rather miffed that she didn't ask for more money. I love Piers' tweet, which was, don't blame me, get an agent.
And she was sat in that very seat. How proud do you feel? Also,
I swapped chairs before we
I
started.
feel a bit uncomfortable now, I
I
think.
wonder if she's bugged the place.
Yeah.
From what I understand from the legal perspective, and I will quote, I am not a lawyer, just before anybody starts, it seems to be that if they were able to prove that the person in the TV show was readily identifiable as this particular woman, then she has a case, apparently. And the fact that these kind of armchair sleuths were able to find her in an incredibly short amount of time kind of proves that she's right.
Both for the purposes of legal and just for my own sanity. I mean, if they have accused her of something that hasn't happened, being convicted of a criminal offence, then that is something that really is pretty shameful.
Oh, 100%. And if she can prove this, then, you know, just take Netflix to the cleanest for all she can, in my opinion.
Well, no, she probably can't, because haven't Harry and Meghan been there already? They've had to sell the building, the Archwell Foundation.
In the words of Liam Burns, there's no money left.
Absolutely. I mean, look, Sam, on a more general note, we've seen a lot of these, these series and a lot of these dramas, things like The Crown and whatever, where people take them very, very literally. And sometimes there are factual inaccuracies in it. I mean, I don't want to sound like a sad individual, though I am. But does the media go too far in portraying real people?
Well, I think there's a sense to which we've all lost our sense of fun, right? You put on the television, you've got Cilla Black up there pretending that she can sing. She can't. Look, we all used to have a bit of fun about that. And nowadays...
So you think that's where the absence of the acting started? Back in the mid-70s, roughly, with Cilla. Yeah.
Has the quote-unquote stalker who inspired Netflix worldwide hit Baby Reindeer say she's going to sue Netflix because of what they've done to her?
It is true.
It's absolutely true. OK, so to Sam, dozens of pro-Palestinian students have staged a protest during Jerry Seinfeld's graduation ceremony speech at Duke University. Or is it pronounced Duke University?
Well, look, this is the home of the American South, right? But it is a university that, like everywhere else, has been taken over by these mad, overprivileged, undereducated, know-nothing loudmouths. I really, really hope this isn't true. I haven't seen the story. I hope this isn't true. Jerry Seinfeld is, in my opinion, one of the best comedians to have come out of the United States in the last 50 years. And what has this guy got to do with Israel other than the fact he's Jewish? I mean, if this did happen, this is an utter despicable case of anti-Semitism.
We've heard this before. I mean, I completely disagree with some of the people who were kicking off about the police saying that somebody was openly Jewish. They were making the point that these protesters are so racist that if you walk around a skull cap in central London, you'll be torn to pieces.
Oh, yeah, 100%. The reason that Jerry Seinfeld got kind of drafted into this was he was one of 400 actors, comedians, writers, things that signed his open letter in support of Israel after the Hamas attack. And he was receiving another honorary doctorate or something, and people got up and walked out and all the rest of it. If you actually listened to his speech, it's quite an interesting one. He said, you can have all your opinions and have all your beliefs, but don't lose your sense of humour, which I find was rather lost on the audience that walked out. But
they probably didn't hear it.
Yeah, that's true. But there was one. There's been a spate of these across these kind of graduation ceremonies. There was one I saw. I think it was at Columbia University, where it was a young girl who'd received her master's degree, which in this particular university is about $180,000, and she ripped it up in protest. I was like, not being funny, but
if I was her dad, I'd have the money back.
My God.
But I bet she's only ripped it up symbolically. She hasn't said, take it away from me entirely.
Well, and I think
bearing in mind, reality will dawn in a few days. And she'll think, actually, I need to have a career and a job and earn some money.
And this is the thing. I think you can have all the opinions you like. You can think that this is the biggest issue that you'll ever see in your lifetime. But at some point, you have to have a sense of perspective. And these people who I don't bemoan them for wanting to get involved, but they until about 15 minutes ago, most of them couldn't point to Israel or Palestine.
Well, and I bet most of them still can't. Look, this is just fashionable sixth form playing at anarchists. This is just pretend stuff. It's not even political from their point of view. It's just because they're bored, spoiled little rich kids.
I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I didn't watch the Eurovision Song Contest last week, but I did watch the voting, and I thought it was really telling. If you look at the national juries, they didn't give Israel any points, but then you looked at the voting public. Now, just to explain to everyone, there are 37 separate public votes in each of the countries, and then there's a 38th for the rest of the world. Now, OK, Israel came second in the points, but actually they had won Britain, they had won Spain, they had won Italy, they had won Germany, they'd won, and they won the rest of the world, which is really probably the United States of America. And so this Israel boycott that we've heard about enjoys no public popularity whatsoever.
No, I'm interested on that. I know there was a number of venues across London that had said that they were going to boycott the final. Then they suddenly realised how much money they actually make out of the kind of Eurovision Song Contest final. And they said, oh, actually, we think in the spirit of community, we're actually going to bring it back. It's nothing to do with that.
Sam was very disappointed that Ollie Alexander didn't win because you loved that Union Jack Bra, didn't you?
Well, look, I love nothing more than a romp in the men's lavatory too.
Hang on a second. Whilst there's been... Yes, I was about to mention it. Just to be clear, you took a selfie in a unisex toilet at the other place.
Yeah. So, hang on, you were wearing a dodgy Mac.
It's a very expensive trench coat, thank you very much.
So obviously there's cubicles and then there's
and then there's a giant mirror.
There's mirrors. So we weren't looking at anything.
No, there was nobody else in the bathroom. I was just checking.
To be clear, he's not on the toilet.
I'm not on the toilet.
Okay, what's happened?
So basically, I took this photo as you do, and just joking around because it's a common thing that presenters and commentators, and there's a hashtag to it that you do.
It's a proper thing.
And it's just a silly Twitter thing. And my God, I posted it to Twitter, and people lost their absolute minds over it. I was like, guys,
but that's why we tweet.
I have to admit that is why we tweet it, just to wind you up. I hate to break this to you, but we wind you up deliberately, and you take the bait every single time.
But I'll tell you what's going to upset you, Pete, is when they said middle-aged men.
Middle-aged man. Middle-aged man
Pete,
looking for attention.
I'm getting to such an age now that that's actually a compliment.
I'm 33, Russell.
I'm not.
Pete, it's fair to say that people do sometimes mistake you for being over 40.
Sometimes. When I was 17, somebody once thought I was 29 years old.
So
I was 17.
Well, that's helpful for buying beer and fags, isn't it? But here's my question, right? So I can't really do selfies because I always end up A, I've not got a particularly steady hand, but B, I always end up taking a photo of the wrong thing. That sounded bad.
Yeah.
But let me just be clear with you right now. Let's just be clear with you right now. Will I offend the political left by just going into the toilet there and taking a photo in the mirror?
Yes, you should absolutely do it.
That is brilliant.
Yes.
I will do it every single day.
Yeah. Yes. My favourite thing is a lot of nightclubs now have gender-neutral toilets. I've yet to see any of these people complain about the selfies taken in gender-neutral toilets, say in LGBT venues. I just think it's rather the hypocrisy is particularly staggering. And yes, I know exactly the people I'm talking to right now.
Okie dokie. Well, I don't. So that's helpful. Okay. So have dozens of Palestinian students walked out of a Jerry Seinfeld speech? Is it true or is it false?
Regrettably, I think it's one bad joke. True.
Absolutely true. OK, Pete, a new study has claimed that oat milk consumption might be linked to declining intelligence in young people.
Oh, God.
Before we start, I've got friends of mine who are vegetarian and vegan, and I have to say, I don't mind vegetarian food myself. Vegetarian curry, for example. But...
with meat on the plate as well.
With a side order.
With a steak.
Side order of keema. But look, what I don't understand is why they have these very, very processed foods. People that are saying, oh, well, I believe in health food, let's have some fake bacon. Ugh.
Oh, exactly, yeah. And if you look at the number of these companies that started with the fake meat things, and the vast majority of them have either gone bust or they've had to merge together because sales of them plummeted. Pretty quickly.
I'm on one of these venture capital websites, and it goes, we're revolutionising food. Have you invented a new burger? Yeah. We've invented a new burger. Yeah. It's like, how many people... I mean, there was one of them the other day who had taken, like, ants and crushed them up and turned them into...
Actually, can I be the balance here? So there is a company, can I mention the company called Beyond, right? Beyond.
Yes,
Their meat is gorgeous.
Is it?
It's lovely. A Beyond Burger is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've tried some of them, and I don't really mind them. I think they're perfectly fine, but I'm going to have to say this. I don't think they should be able to call them meat. I don't think you should be able to say that it's...
Well,
it's a burger.
Why pretend? You're either a vegan and a vegetarian, or you're not. So you either stick to lentils, but don't make lentils in the shape of a steak.
By the way, I just want to ask you, Sam, before we move on, I had an argument with a friend of mine in an Indian restaurant. I believe that curried lentils are honorary meat. So you can eat lentils, but only in that one circumstance.
meat.
In general, lentils are unacceptable. But when they're put in curry sauce, they become acceptable.
Unless you're part of the cast of The Young Ones, of course.
Yeah. Absolutely. OK, so Pete, has a new study said that oat milk consumption makes you less intelligent? Is it true or is it false?
Hopefully, I'm going to say this one's false.
It's absolutely false.
That Was the Woke That Was continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was the Woke That Was.
Esther McVeigh has announced a ban on civil service jobs dedicated to equality, diversity and inclusion. There'll be none left. Is it true or is it false?
Well, 14 years too late, it's true.
Yeah. And why have the Conservatives been so weak on dealing with this?
I think because the politicians themselves, the likes of Rishi Sunak and others, are weak, because the civil service we've lost control of. We now have a completely unaccountable and obviously unelected civil service with no mandate. However, they are now the tail that is wagging the proverbial dog. And it seems that even going back, if you remember, to the whole Dominic Raab thing, where he was one of very, very few politicians that stood up to the civil service, bearing in mind the clue when it comes to civil servants is in the servant element of the name, right? So they are mandated to do exactly as they are told, whether they like it or not. If not, don't be a civil servant. You know, pretty clear, really. So Dominic Raab stands up to them, and what happens? A concerted campaign within the civil service to hound him out of office and out of his career as a so-called
I think
bully.
Russell, we failed to recognise the severity of that issue.
Yep.
The idea that the trade unions...
Boris should have backed him.
Yeah, the idea that the civil service trade unions can effectively veto government ministers is a disaster.
But worse than that, now we're in a situation where we've got the civil service not once or twice, but on multiple levels, suing the government to stop them with, for instance, the Rwanda policy. Now, civil servants have absolutely no place doing that.
No. By
it should be banned. It should be against the law for the civil service to get in the way of their paymasters.
By the way, I should say that around 50% of the audience are from the United States of America. Hello, y'all. And of course, in the United States of America, they're going to be quite confused by this. Because what happens when any new president or any new governor comes in, he appoints all of his officials. Well, of course, we don't do that in Britain. Sam, I was always against what they call the American spoil system of appointing all the government jobs. But I have to say, if what happens is you inherit left-wingers who are always going to push their agenda, then we've got to go down that route. Yeah, to adapt to what Andrew Jackson, the old American president, used to say, there's no job in the civil service so complicated that a Conservative can't do it, right? It's about time that these people reflected the values of the country, because we have seen time and time again, neutrality simply doesn't exist in the civil service. These people are an activist fifth column within government working for and on behalf of the Labour Party. There were leak after leak after leak during the Boris Johnson government, all to the same journalists, all of whom happened to be very friendly with Labour, and accordingly they took down Priti Patel, Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson. Basically, if you were involved in Brexit, they were coming for you, and they got their man every time.
Two words, very cautiously: Sue Gray.
I mean, that's extraordinary. Just to explain, so she's the woman who investigated Boris Johnson, and when she left her neutral civil service job, she began working for the Labour Party.
As chief of staff to the leader of the Labour Party.
Oh, sorry.
Uh-oh.
It's Sue Gray! Oh, my God, really? Oh. Well, I must buy you a pint and discuss it. Sue has just told me that her other job when she was in government was also to check out what websites ministers had been on, just to make sure they couldn't be blackmailed. I'd love to see that list.
But no, the thing with Sue Gray and her appointment to Chief of Staff as Keir Starmer, I think showed the complete corruption of the civil service from top to bottom. I think it embodied everything that is wrong in politics in this country, particularly what I call Westminster establishment politics.
I mean, it was extraordinary. One day, this woman was a beyond reproach neutral civil servant, and the following day, she admitted she'd been in negotiations with the Labour Party for months about being their chief of staff.
Exactly.
And here's exactly what the solution is. If you had a strong Prime Minister and a strong front bench, would be to go to the Treasury and ask how much it's going to cost to sack 100,000 civil servants. That sounds like a big number. And again, to our American viewers, there are 460,000 civil servants in national government alone right now. So to lose 100,000 of 460,000 actually wouldn't really make that much of a difference, given that most of them are doing very little working from home anyway. The cost of that, let's call it £4 or £5 billion. I would literally say to the Treasury, you need to earmark that. I'm going to need it. And I would go in the next day and fire 100,000 civil servants, particularly those that won't return to their desks, those that are dissenters, those that are responsible for suing their paymasters. And that, I think, might send a little message.
I'll tell you what I did when I worked in local government. It's a few years ago now, but we said any manager who manages 3 people or less is not a manager. Delete them. And do you know something? Our approval ratings went through the roof, because what it was, these people had created jobs for themselves, impeding the junior staff.
But look, Esther McVey, great, welcome, but way too late, way too little. And of course, it's just signalling to the electorate, because we know that there's an election only 5 or 6 months.
And we know that you already said that it's true that Esther McVey has announced plans to stop equality, diversity and inclusion jobs in the civil service. It is, in fact, true. And so now on to Sam. Sadiq Khan has been given a pay rise of £6,000. He now makes over £160,000 a year, which is more than the Prime Minister. I mean, this comes on the back of Humza Yousaf getting 52 grand for life a year, and he was only in for 1 year. I mean, it was his package. Financial package. His financial package.
Can I just say, I love how all our brains went to a certain moment there.
But Humza Yousaf's financial package was in the millions. Because if he lives to the age of 75, I mean, he's only about 40 now. But anyway, has Sadiq Khan got a pay rise as well?
I can only hope not. I mean, what is this man getting rewarded for? We've had ULEZ, we've had everything else. And so far, his entire act as being re-elected as Mayor of London is to go and pose in this suit that makes him look like a leprechaun, green suit on the middle of the Millennium Bridge.
That was a very odd sartorial choice, wasn't it, the next day, don't you think?
Well, he's a modern progressive.
Made him look like a gardener.
Who do you reckon's better dressed, him or Justin Trudeau? No, it's the Trudeau. The Trudeau's great. We're not. By the way, we never criticise Justin Trudeau on this show because he's Canada's first black Prime Minister.
So this is quite interesting. Well, how Sadiq Khan's kind of justified this pay rise, because it's not just for him. It's for, I think it's 15 of 16 of his top staff, or something like that. He said that it's coming from a pay recommendation board. Now, if I remember rightly, the government's line on public sector pay has been, it's been from recommendations from public pay bodies and all the rest of it. But suddenly, those ones aren't right, but the ones that affect him are perfectly fine.
Although, Pete,
it's interesting, the double standard there, isn't it?
Pete, I'm sorry to come up with a conspiracy theory here, but I'll let you into a little secret. The independent people who decide your pay only get employed if they always put it up.
Yeah,
so the consultants who go, I don't think you should get a pay rise this year, get employed by nobody.
And I'll tell you what has been publicised this week, which might be a clue in terms of this being true, is, of course, the wonderfully useful Night Tsar, who definitely has had a pay rise this week of 6%, I think, is now on.
It's actually called Amy Lame.
Right,
Mrs. Lame.
£135,000 a year. I think other mayors actually have volunteers that work pretty much for nothing.
They do.
But in London, we have a Night Tsar that costs £135,000, and I don't think anyone's really sure what she does. Because
it was very difficult for her to get to work because she is a comedian and DJ, so works evenings. I'm not being.
But has she made an impact on London's night?
Yes, she has.
She's killed it.
Try and get a pint at 9 o'clock on any weekday evening other than a Thursday, Friday. London's nightlife has been emptied out. And those of us that particularly bemoan the fact that you can't sit outside at this time of year in Soho getting a drink, this woman has been a disaster. She's getting a bonus for every bar she shuts.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but hang on a second, Sam. I get the impression, and I don't know, but when I was younger, in fact, actually, forget the fact that we're all slightly different ages. All of us were in that age where when you got to 18, you went out to nightclubs and bars and whatever. Young people today don't seem to have the pleasure of each other's company anymore. No. They seem to just sit there on apps all day. I think that we're creating a hermit generation.
Yeah, they're too busy recovering from their hurt feelings over the mean tweets.
Or having to go into work rather than having to be allowed to work at home.
But this is the thing, when it comes to civil, people like Amy Lane being paid X amount of money, is I don't mind if they're doing a good job. If they're doing a good job,
it's a nonsense job.
But no, to be fair, if you look in Manchester, I think it's Sacha Lord who's the Night Tsar up there. His politics and mine couldn't be further apart. However, he has actually done something. Manchester nightlife is booming. It is one of the greatest things about that city. And, I might be a little bit biased coming from near there, but
is the Night Tsar in London, is she accountable? So does she face questions from GLA members?
By the way, talking of the Night Tsar, I once assisted DJing at the Walkabout in Wigan.
Oh,
it was an
God.
excellent night. It was an excellent night. It's been Australian themed for about 25
I think,
years.
to me, the Night Tsar sounds like a nursery rhyme, and I think in terms of her effectiveness, it is.
Yeah, but I think we have to remember that the night industry in London, it was at one point a booming bit of the London economy and a very key part of it. You know, there are a lot of people who are employed in the hospitality sector. And her kind of lack of understanding of the actual industry, not just working in a bar, but
Sorry, you're saying that she didn't have any experience?
From what I understand, she never really has come from compared to Sacha Lord, for example, who actually has experience in the industry.
I worked for Westminster City Council, and when I wandered round, and part of my brief was to work on the nighttime economy.
When you were a bin man.
Yeah, when I was a bin man. Hey up, lad, stick that on the back of the truck. Part of it was the nighttime economy, part of my brief as a press officer. And let me tell you, the one thing that they all said was, the reason bars close in the city centres, whether that be London, Manchester, Birmingham, is business rates. Now, Russell, you're involved in property. The simple fact is that you would have these people who'd open up a bar in somewhere like central Manchester and be charged $100,000 a year in tax before they'd even opened the door and made a penny.
Yeah, and the reality is that business rates are actually set by government. So local authorities tend to get
and
the
blame.
blame.
Don't get the money.
No, well, they get some of it, don't they? But the local authorities get the blame for setting high business rates. It's actually not their fault. The same as actually when a pub closes or a shop closes, the perception is by the local populace that it's, again, the council's fault. But often, obviously that's down to landlords and the way they set rents. But yes, look, yeah.
I mean, Theo Pathetis said that, he said, look, even if you didn't just tax profits, you tax turnover, that would be better. Because he said the big problem is, you've got this massive liability for business rates and it just kills the whole thing. And of course, people then go to the supermarket and go, well, I don't understand how I can buy a bottle of wine for £4 in the supermarket and it's 25 quid in a town centre bar. Well, they're probably losing money on 25 quid by the time they've paid for all the costs.
The vast majority of restaurants and bars basically live on the line between in the red and in the black.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's one of the most risky industries really now. And it has been for quite some time, actually.
I mean, I don't want Sam, I don't want to come across as having a go at Sadiq unfairly, but he doesn't seem to have any real interest in protecting bars and nightclubs.
I think it goes further than that. Cars, meat, nights out. The left in this country, and in fact around the world, seem to have a problem with everything that you and I would find fun.
Yeah.
They are the joy police. Everywhere there is enjoyment, they want to go around with their moralising, telling us that we shouldn't be doing it, shutting it down, locking us down. Some of them want to return to a kind of permanent lockdown.
Yes.
We're going to have climate lockdowns and all the rest of it. I think, actually, some of this decline has been a deliberate plan by those in these global social networks.
Talking of climate lockdowns, I mean, when I go home, I have to get a car home because obviously I finish at 1 a.m. on Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays. So we get to the junction on the M25 for Heathrow Airport, and they say that they reduce your speed now to stop pollution. And you think, what, you really think it's the plane
with a plane landing every 30 seconds?
And you think, look, whatever you think about, planes versus cars, clearly that bit of the M25 is not affected by pollution because the vehicle's driving past. But it's just once again, I think the purpose of that is just to be able to put up on the gantry, we've got a climate emergency.
Yeah, there's stuff like that, 100%. But one thing I will pick up when it comes to Soho and the nightlife aspect is we also have to look at the number of people that are moving in and living in these areas and then demanding these areas suddenly stop having nightclubs and bars. I'm sorry. No, the local councils have to start saying to what we call NIMBYs, and not in my backyard, kind of anti-development people.
Pete, I've got to stop you here because, as Russell will remember, Westminster City Council did try and move all the council tenants out from Soho and central London, and it didn't end well, did it, Russell? They moved them to tower blocks with asbestos, so they all got asbestosis and died.
Oh, right,
it was not ideal.
Well, maybe we don't do it like that. We learn from our mistakes, Andre.
I think what you've got to do is you've got to say, I do accept that council tenants shouldn't be in £2 million flats in central London, but let's actually ensure the accommodation we move them to.
Can I just suggest that the serious point about the hospitality industry in London is if Sadiq Khan and his so-called Night Tsar are not capable themselves, even though they have the responsibility of actually fixing it, that the government can do so. So I've been sitting here thinking, well, maybe the answer is to subsidise business rates for pubs. Maybe that would be an obvious answer. However, the even more obvious answer, rather than money going into the system and kind of swinning around and coming back out in subsidies or whatever, is simply to cut alcohol duty for pubs. because the amount of money that the Exchequer receive for that, notwithstanding the fact that that's needed, if you were to cut the cost, not in off licences, not in shop, in supermarkets, but in pubs, that would encourage surely people to come back to pubs.
I'll tell you one thing that we're going to have to be very, very careful of. I've mentioned before today that I work with the British Bangladeshi Caterers Association, which is the trade association for the people who have all the Indian restaurants. 80% of them are owned by Bangladeshis. And what they were saying is the only reason your Indian restaurant is open for most of the country is because they bought the properties years ago and the restaurant business is paying the rent. Yeah. The minute that they can sell those buildings, those restaurants will close.
Or they're not paying any rent at all because they own the freehold.
Exactly right. Yeah. So effectively, they no longer want the restaurant because it doesn't make any money. The only reason they keep it open is because they happen to own the building.
But this ridiculous situation where you're paying now in London, what, £8, £9 a pint of beer? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous.
I mean, every time I go back up north, it is the first question that people are fascinated to ask is how much is a pint? And when you say it's like £8-9, people go, oh, really? And after a while, it annoys me because I've been here nearly 10 years and I'm just kind of used to it now. But I do find it funny that Andre every time says, you're in a Northerners coming out again, when I go, how much?
How much? How much?
But,
in fact, how much is it for a pint? So you like drinking at Oral Rugby Club. Yeah. Hello to everyone at Oral Rugby Club. It is a private members club, but how much is a pint in there?
It's about £4.
So that's quite expensive for a club.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, obviously, because it's a local club and all the rest of it. But
it's Oral Rugby Club. They say, all right, cocky.
Hi, Dad.
Hang on, the further irony, of course, don't even get me started on MPs' subsidised bars.
Oh, yes.
Why is it OK for an MP on 90k a year plus 100k or so in expenses, which, they spend on staff and accommodation, I get all that. Why should they be allowed, subsidised at the expense of the taxpayer, alcohol?
Because after this, the Deputy Speaker is taking me for a beer in Parliament. Yeah. No, but on a serious note, I have to say, I think that Parliament has become a very, very toxic environment because they just get shedded in there.
It's slightly out of touch, do you think, maybe?
I have to say to you, look, historically, the centre of national debate was Parliament. Whatever you think about channels like this, the centre of gravity is in media debates and what we're doing.
It's here.
The MPs and I mean bloody peers are completely irrelevant. I mean, do you know, I'm saying this to Dr. David Starkey. David Cameron created more seats in the House of Lords than Elizabeth I and Henry VIII and King James all put together. Yeah. It's just extraordinary. So let's get rid of the subsidised booze.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but also...
And cut fuel duty for pubs in city centres.
But like you said, it annoys me every time it comes around the budget.
Are we agreeing on something?
I know, and I don't like it.
Because on Twitter we never do.
Yeah, I feel very uncomfortable about agreeing with you. But...
on Twitter do you exchange toilet selfies?
Well, maybe we take toilet selfies in a different way. Over which we disagree.
What, yours look good and Peter crap?
No, mine, I'm not wearing a dirty old Mac.
Well, he needs that for later.
But one thing that really annoys me is every time it comes around to the budget, the Chancellor stands up saying we're keeping beer duty at a penny or whatever, and I'm like, you need to go further than that. And every time landlords look at the budget and go, this year maybe, and they don't do it. And like you said, we can keep blaming Sadiq Khan and we keep blaming this Amy LeMay.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that as well.
The central government also has a role to play.
Well, I have to say, we've gone slightly off topic, but I will say one thing. The fuel duty freezes for Scotch whisky have built a global business for Scotland. Anyway, we were talking about Sadiq Khan and we're asking him whether, given his successes recently, including the nighttime economy, he's given himself a £6,000 pay rise. Is it true or is it false, Sam?
He must have done. True.
It's absolutely true.
That was The Woke That Was continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
Rwanda has officially declared Britain an unsafe country. Is it true? Or is it? By the way, can I tell you the thing that I found extraordinary about this? I hadn't realised until the other day that the Republic of Ireland's Supreme Court declared Britain an unsafe country on the grounds that there was a risk of people being deported to Rwanda that the British Supreme Court had said was an unsafe country.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened.
It's getting confusing.
It is getting confusing, but then when you pass this thing called the Windsor Framework, which is all this has come back to kind of haunt everyone, which people, all three of us have said on many different shows, this was a stupid idea and this is what was going to happen.
The problem is with the Windsor Framework,
I'm not really surprised.
The 5-star hotel, the Fairmont View, is in Egham, Surrey. It's not in Windsor.
It's not in Windsor.
It isn't.
I know.
It may badge itself up, but don't trust them. They'll have you. Don't trust them.
No, but this is the point, is that the Windsor Framework basically put the European Union at the centre and as the primary rule provider of Northern Ireland. And then when it came to these immigration situations, everybody knew this was going to happen. The Windsor Framework was a reasonable idea that nobody bothered to think through.
Windsor Framework was named after a place it wasn't even signed in.
Yeah.
Right. It's like that situation where Stilton forgot to register that they could make cheese in their town. So the EU has now officially banned Stilton from making Stilton.
Oh, exactly. And, you've got all these kind of things. But the Labour Party announced their great plans for dealing with the migrant crisis, and they seem to have amounted to complete nothing.
But they're going to go after all the gangs.
Well, yes, but
even though they're in other parts of the world over which we have no legal jurisdiction.
Pete, I want to say, and people sometimes think I'm being a bit nasty on this, but as I keep pointing out, I'm a dual citizen of the UK and the Irish Republic. I advocate a very strong line with the Irish Republic. And I'd say a couple of reasons. Number one, I think their behaviour towards the United Kingdom during the Brexit negotiation has ended the we are cousins and you should have special status game. Right? And also, I will say, those conspiracy theorists who said if you give them independence, they'll ally with Spain and France against you have been proved right.
Yeah.
And they've been saying that since the time of Cromwell.
How robust a line are we talking
about?
Are we arresting the rebel leaders? Are we retaking the GP?
I think he's advocating invading.
Yeah. Just wait till he's had a couple of pints after the show and then we'll find us how robust it gets.
Hang on, Ireland signed up to the EU. This is what happens.
But my point is, I think it encourages separatists elsewhere. But one thing that we've got to do with the Republic of Ireland is we've got to say what is good for the goose is good for the gander. They have said that we've got to deal with the EU as a whole. We should deal with the EU as a whole. Rishi Sunak's job was to get migrants discouraged. I don't know whether it's worked or not. The Irish Republic says it has. I think we should be celebrating.
Yeah, exactly. I actually think I think Rishi Sunak can take somewhat of a victory lap over this. Not a very big lap, but a particularly decent one. And one thing I find fascinating is if we actually look at within the European Union itself, there's actually about 19 or 18, 19 countries at the minute, member states as they prefer to be called, that actually want to have their own Rwanda-style policy there. There's the idea that the European Union is united on this issue is nonsense.
I think what upset
Denmark already use it.
I think at least I think they've got it in place, but I don't think they've actually used it.
I think what's upset a lot of people in the European Union is what Germany did by inviting in all those migrants and insisting that they go as well. This is the equivalent of me having a New Year's Eve party and telling my next door neighbours to put up my guests.
And look how well it's going for Germany economically. They are lagging way behind Britain.
OK, right. So, Pete, we were talking a little bit about the Republic of Ireland, but the actual question was, has Rwanda officially declared Britain an unsafe country? Is it true or is it false?
I'm going to say this one's false.
It's absolutely false. OK, so to Russell. The chairman of Marks and Spencer's says the police do not care about shoplifters anymore. They, of course, famously pursued a private prosecution against a shoplifter. Well, it was a burglar, but nonetheless, they are now very concerned that people are just walking out with goods.
Yeah, well, I don't see how this can't be true because, look, we know that effectively shoplifting, a bit like burglary, a bit like theft of cars and from cars, has effectively been decriminalised. It seems that the police service really, in respect of those crimes, which they still are, by the way, really are just a mechanism to get a crime reference number. That's it. We don't see police on the streets as a deterrent. When you call them, they barely respond, maybe don't respond at all. We've seen some platitudes, I think, from government over the last few months in terms of now insisting that the police should actually attend if you are assaulted or you're burgled or your shop is raided by shoplifters. And I know it might seem sensationalist, but the increasing amount of images on social media where people are going into shops with big bags and filling their bags up with things and just walking out. Shopkeepers now, bearing in mind, this isn't all about Marks and Spencer.
Yes, that's right.
No. This is about little independent traders that are making their living by selling fruit and veg or shoes or whatever it might be, whose livelihoods have been decimated by the police's lack of attention. Of course, the fact that it's handed down both from senior police officers, government and the judiciary, that effectively, I think it's under £200, is not really a criminal offence anymore. Tell that to the shopkeeper that's literally seeing his profits walking out the door.
At the end of my street, I've got the utmost stereotypical family-owned Asian shopkeeper, and what they have to do is take their CCTV and put photos of the shoplifters up at the door saying these people are thieves and are banned from our shops. Now remember something, because these people have not been arrested and convicted, on paper, they might even be able to sue the
I was
shopkeeper
literally
for
just about to say
defamation.
that.
Well, and the left, of course, would say, yeah, but it's cost of living crisis and it's poor people that are going up. What they're stealing, of course, is flour and butter and eggs. No, they're not. What they're nicking is Nike trainers and Apple Macs and so on.
There was someone nicks from a water stone.
But there was, there was someone convicted this week who said, and it was, I mean, I know it's serious, but it was so funny to watch, that they admitted to stealing £3 million worth of goods, but put it down to mental health issues.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I put it down to the fact that they wanted £3 million worth of goods.
Well,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
there was one organisation that estimated that last year these theft rates cost about £1.8 billion to shopkeepers, and there's the number of violent incidences in independent shops has gone up by 76%.
But Sam, let's talk about the elephant in the room here, which is that these security guards, if they grab the shoplifters, they are going to be prosecuted. It's not unheard of for a shoplifter to not be prosecuted and the guy who thumps in one to be prosecuted.
Yeah, and it just reflects how broken our priorities are in this country. That a lot of people have a turnaround and they'll say, well, crime like this is victimless. There's no victim here. Yeah. Well, there are victims here, actually. It's you and me, because when you go into Sainsbury's and you buy your tin of baked beans, you are paying 3, 4, 5p extra in order to pay for the steak that was nicked by some local oik who decided to come in, then wheel himself down to the pub and open up his jacket and say, "Who wants some
You
steak?"
could borrow Pete's Mac.
Leave
for that.
my Mac out of this.
It looked like it was my mistake.
I will say one thing.
What about what?
You're the Lady Gaga of Mac.
I will say one thing. Was the word oik regularly used at Southend Grammar School?
Well, you know, I was looking.
Because oik is normally quite disparaging, isn't it?
What? Look, I am disparaging to these people. These people are dogs. They are beasts. I put it that highly. You see them walking in. They don't care about anything. They are shameless. They are confronted. People film them. They're doing it on camera. And why should they care, though? Why should they care? Because the police, the government, Sadiq Khan, a number of others have sent them an unrelenting message that we don't care.
And I'll tell you the
Fill
other thing.
your boots,
I'll tell you the
literally.
other thing. I'll tell you the other thing that I think is very sad. And I don't want to blame the supermarkets for being a victim of crime, but what happened to the little old ladies on the till? Right, I think we should bring them back. I don't think these self-service tills are any good. I think what the supermarkets have done, I think they've been short-sighted themselves by saying to themselves, well, the additional shoplifting is less expensive than paying for Betty to sit on the till. And I think that's a mistake.
Well, I think a number of supermarkets are about bringing them back, aren't they? If I remember, or some already have done. And I think there's their thing is, it's people want them back because of the communication. It's not. I think it's because it would be harder to steal from them. If I remember rightly.
There's another side to this as well. Next time you get your council tax bill through, which is around March, April every year, have a look at what they call the police precept, which is the percentage increase that you will see in the amount you pay specifically for your police service. Where I live in Essex, every year for the last 5 or 6 years has been absolutely at the maximum.
Yes.
Now, I don't see that I'm getting a commensurate visibility or service from the police. Bearing in mind, not only have we got the disintegration of society in terms of some crimes not being seen as crimes, we're paying more for the privilege.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the problem is with the police, of course, that they're not actually policing. What they're doing is picking some crimes to retrospectively investigate. Yeah. The original idea of policing, in the days before detectives were even legal, it was a criminal offence to be a detective in the past because they didn't want people spying on us. But these people walked the streets and physically stopped people.
And we don't see them on the beat anymore. We just don't see them on the beat.
But hang on, and this is where I will defend the police. Look, there is a side of it that the police aren't interested in theft. But one of the reasons why they're not interested in theft is, look, they go and nick the guy. They bring him up before the beaks the next morning. And what does he get? At most, a slap on the wrist. And unless the courts are actually prepared to send a message and say, look, no, if you walk into a Waitrose and walk out with half the meat aisle, you are going down, you're going to spend some time in prison, and that's going to be the end of it.
Hang on. Beaks. So I mean, I'm not being funny.
Is this new terminology?
I was going to say,
I understand.
Beaks as a reference to somebody in authority or a member of the judiciary. Have you been reading Samuel Pepys or something? What's going on with oiks? Have you got it's a more thing? Sorry, Samuel Pepys. He said, "Let's go for a pint of wine at the hosiery."
No, but I have to admit, I think Sam is right here. The police get a lot of blame on this stuff, and particularly, say, example, on the climate protests and all the rest of it. But when they are put in front of the judiciary
the front of the beaks.
In the front of the beaks. I'll dumb it down for everyone watching.
No, I think that's quite good.
I'll take it.
It's historic.
But no, I think, again, we are seeing a lack of follow-through from the judiciary to send clear messages through the punishments. And it's not just, like we say, in the case of shoplifting, but we look at the climate protests. You know, how many times do they just suddenly get a slap on the wrist and off you go, and then 3 weeks later they're back through the system again? You know, at some point we have to stop blaming the police for things and actually say that there is a whole system here that needs a top-to-tail rejig, and until we do that, these situations like this are only going to get worse.
There's also a psychology to this, which is if you allow the denigration of society at the bottom, as in litter and petty crime being unsolved and unchecked, what you end up with is what Rudy Giuliani, before he went mad, and ended up as crazy as he is, what he used to call broken window syndrome, which is that if you fix everything in visibility terms, aesthetic, and you kind of show and portray order at street level, actually people's behaviour as society is better. What we're actually in the process of doing in Britain now is doing the opposite of what Rudy Giuliani advocated.
If you remember the London riots, the Greater Manchester Police stopped it in Manchester through their tactic of nicking the first person that smashes something.
Yes.
Because you nick the first person that smashes something and everyone goes, oh no, they're going to arrest me as well. Yeah. And the GMP, literally with 3 guys outside Halfords, stopped the entire riot. It wasn't too difficult. Anyway, so Russell, has the chairman of Marks & Spencer said the police do not care about shoplifting? Is it true or is it false?
I hope it's true.
It's absolutely true.
That Was the Woke That Was continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was the Woke That Was.
OK, to our final question, and it's to Sam. Keir Starmer wants to double the BBC licence fee when he gets into power because he wants to thank them for the years of support.
Why does he get all the good ones?
I know,
This is totally unfair.
Well, I've been doing this show for a year and a half and I've never had a question like that.
It's because I actually like Sam.
Wow.
Go on, Sam. He's rubbing his hands.
I know, yeah.
Look, Gary Lineker and the rest of them deserve every little bit of their Brucey bonus. You only need to listen to the Today programme every single...
I can't look at him.
I can't, no, we're done, we're off.
Look, you only need to listen to the Today programme. You need to look at that website every day. You need to listen to the bleating, the moaning, the crying out over the Rwanda policy, which... by the way, is something the overwhelming majority of the British public support. You only need to look at the fact that they won't call Hamas, a literal legal terrorist organisation, terrorists, to know why Keir Starmer should give them triple, quadruple. They are the best money that the Labour Party's ever spent.
Just on a serious note, I mean, has the BBC been destroyed by the licence fee? Because I think if they were forced to actually appeal to the public, that could be a great institution.
But it's a thing called accountability, isn't it?
Yes.
So if you're accountable because you either need, electoral support or you need money from commercial organisations, which is based on the quality of your output, then as a consequence, you have to be better. If you're sitting there with no accountability whereby, you can do what you want, well, that's why we get reruns of Mrs. Brown's Boys on all the time.
Oh, God, please. I've said this
and
before.
And the most woke Doctor Who.
No, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I was devastated at the death of my mother. She was a great woman. But if there was one criticism I'd make of her, the Mrs. Brown's Boys Christmas box set was not acceptable. I mean, that was not acceptable. Yeah, that thing, I'm still waiting to laugh. Okay, it's absolutely appalling.
I always find it funny that people hate on Mrs. Brown's Boys, yet it is routinely voted one of the nation's favourite comedies.
By BBC employees?
No, I think it's by people that actually bother to still watch the BBC. No, it's routinely voted one of the best ones.
And I'll tell you, my late mother was unable to explain to me what I was missing about this. It was awful.
No, but just to slightly change the topic just a little bit, there is one group of friends that the Labour Party are about to go up against, and that's the trade unions this week. Keir Starmer was about to find out just how powerful he is when it comes to years of service. Then what's happened is Keir Starmer has kind of announced his great vision for workers' rights, and the trade unions have gone, you're not doing that. So we're about to see how that's going to go down, which should be very fascinating.
He's going to give in because they fund him.
Well, but this is the thing. If you're the leader of Unite...
No, I think he won't give in because they fund him. That would be the second reason. The first reason is he'll give in because he's a personally weak man.
Yes, exactly.
He won't get as far as the funding problem.
But yeah, I think if we kind of put all these institutions together, trade unions and the BBC, these kind of great kind of powerful lobbying groups, which they are always shifted in one direction. And I'm not being funny. If Keir Starmer does not win with a thumping majority at the next general election, the Labour Party has no purpose existing.
But correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the reality that under Labour governments of the past, there's always been more strikes than under Conservative governments?
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite ironic.
Yeah, because it works.
Because it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that question was to Sam, and has Keir Starmer said he's going to double the BBC licence fee? Is it true or is it false?
I'm afraid it's too good to be true. False.
It's absolutely false. And now time for the scores. So on 15 points, we've got Pete Barnes. On 86 points, we've got Sam Armstrong. But because it's his return to the channel and how well he did filling in for James Whale, we're going to give Russell Quirk 1.3 million points. Congratulations, Russell.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.